Hello neighbor, this is Curt with eTrailer, and today we're taking a look at the Yakima OutPost HD truck bed rack system on our 2024 Toyota Tacoma. Now if you have any experience with the OutPost HD rack system, please leave that in the comments below. We'd love to hear your experience so we can share it with other neighbors, and it helps them make the best decision possible for themselves. Now let's take a look at this rack. Now before we get too in-depth with this particular rack, I want to let you know that this particular kit is intended for use with the Toyota utility or sport track system on the inside of your truck bed. So if you don't have this system, there are other kits that would work as well. However, the adapters with this kit are made for these tracks. The other unfortunate news would be that if you have a tonneau cover, this is not a kit that's adaptable to a tonneau cover, nor is it adaptable if you have a truck bed toolbox that mounts to the side rails. Either one of those are going to interfere with our rack system, so therefore we would have to find a system that is compatible with those for you to use. But if any of those things are not an issue for you, let's get into the features of this rack. Our Toyota Tacoma today is the 5-foot bed version. And with the 5-foot bed version, we've got these set as far apart as we could, which is giving us approximately a 40-inch spread from the center of one bar to the center of the other. Now at a 40-inch spread, that can seem like a lot for some rooftop accessories. However, we've got maybe a 12 to 13-inch gap between the two that we can use to accommodate getting them smaller if you have a rooftop accessory that requires a smaller spread than 40 inches. Now, we have a weight capacity on these bars of 300 pounds off-road, 500 pounds on-road. And because the bars are small enough to accommodate most clamped accessories, we also have the typical Yakima T-slot up at the top that can mount accessories as well. But with those weight capacities and the ability to adjust our crossbar spread, there are a lot of accessories that we can use up here. Rooftop tent is a fantastic example of something you can use on these bars. They're right at about a good height for you to get in and out of that tent comfortably. Not only that, there are going to be times perhaps when you're out that you have some things in the truck bed that you don't want to mix with other cargo. This can accommodate either a cargo carrier or a roof basket type of carrier so that you can keep your cargo separate. And speaking of that cargo that we want to keep separated, let's take a look at exactly what kind of clearance we're going to have from the bottom of our bars to our truck bed. So the towers are going to situate the bars to be 13 inches above the truck bed rails, but from the bottom of the truck to the bottom of the bars, we're looking at 31.5 inches, almost exactly. So that's quite a bit of room in here for you to fit some things if you have some other accessories up here on the bars themselves. For security purposes, one of the things that Yakima has is the SKS or same key system. So you're going to be provided with 2 lock-in keys to keep this secured to your truck rails, and therefore no one's going to be able to steal and make off with your rack. One of the other security features we have are the included tie-downs that come on the OutPost system. On each tower we have a loop on the inside here that can be used as a tie-down or anchor point. We also have a loop and tie-down point at the end of our bar here that is also going to help you keep things secured. One of the things that aesthetically might bother you about this particular set is that there is a very aggressive taper along the top rails here from front to back on the Tacoma. Because these feet are universal and they're meant to be on several different types of truck rails, you're not going to get a perfect snug fit on it. We're seeing a little bit of a gap here and a little bit of an overhang right here. And that unfortunately cannot be helped. However, with all the function that this particular rack gives you, that is not something that would personally bother me. It's still very secure and strong on here. It's just things like that may cause some people to second guess whether they have it on correctly. You do. These are universal fit, as I said. The only thing that makes this particular to this truck and this track are these adapters that are actually holding these feet on. So those are just some of the nice features about the Yakima OutPost HD. Now let's take a look and see exactly how we got this installed. In order to install this on your Toyota utility track, it's going to require these particular adapters here. So what we've got laid out on the table for you is essentially everything that's going to go together to install one of these foot pads. And there will be two of these going on each side of the vehicle. So you've got your foot pad here. These specific adapters are going to be what attaches to your rail using these two different assemblies. Those are made up of these pieces here, these pieces here, and it's also going to include this shim that's going to slide back and forth in between your Toyota utility track. These can be a little bit tricky to get in, so follow along with me and I'll show you exactly how to do it. Now, in order to get this into the track, you're actually going to have to unbolt and remove it just a little bit. It doesn't really give you enough clearance, and this is too long and stiff to just put it in from the back without doing it. So in order to get the clearance for that to come off, what we're going to end up needing to do is just simply take off that end cap. And the instructions that you get from Yakima ask for the first two bolts to be removed. However, there's also a trim plug located in here, and we found that it's very, very difficult to get to. So what we actually did was take apart the first three. That gave us enough leverage to actually pop that plug out, get our shim fed through, and then it popped right back in for us before we could bolt it back down. So we're going to go ahead and do that now and get that taken off. We're using a T30 impact driver head to get this out, and we're going to do this on all three of those bolts that are located furthest back toward the tailgate. Now, with all the bolts removed, you can just pop this off of here just a little bit. Now we're going to have clearance in order to get these in. They're just going to slide right in. We'll feed the first one on down the line. Place our second one in the rail. Feed that on down the line. And now we can go ahead and replace the bolts in the rail. Now that we've got that third screw tightened back in, we'll go ahead and grab our end cap and we'll simply pop that back into place. Now we've got them inside of our rails. We can maneuver them as far front and back as it'll allow in order to mount our feet and towers for the rack. Now, you may notice before we put these foot pads on that the adjustment points here, you're going to have two with an attachment like this and two with an attachment that's going to take a much larger Allen key. That's because the difference between them is that these smaller ones are the ones where you can attach your locking core. I find it best to do two of the same ones on each side of the vehicle. So in our case, we're putting two of the ones that can take a locking core on our driver's side. That way, they can be securely locked or unlocked, both from the same side, and each set of bars is going to be secured to the truck. What you really don't want to do is put two of the same foot on the same bar. Then only one of your bars is secured and the other one is not. Let's go ahead and mount our foot pad. In order to do that, we're going to require the larger bolt, block, and the matching nut that goes with it. We're going to have one set of these, and each one is going to go into these respective slots here. So with the adjustment or the lock core facing inward on the vehicle, the first thing we can do is go ahead and drop our block into the slot. We're going to go ahead and put our bolt down through that as such. Then we'll need to take one of our adapters here. That bolt is simply going to go through that opening on the adapter here on the bottom as such, and we'll have the nut underneath it to make our adjustment going down. Now, where this nut goes into place is hex shaped, so you can simply hold it there with your finger as you hand thread the bolt down into it. Once you get a pretty good grab on it, we can go ahead and do the same on the back part. Now we'll be taking this assembly here and putting it through the appropriate bolt hole. Now, per Yakima's instructions on the Tacoma, we're going to be using this third hole down from the top. We're going to be adjusting the teeth on this block so it matches with the teeth on here for grip. And we're going to need to line that up with the bolt hole that's in that sliding shim that we had put in earlier. Now that we've got everything started as far as all the bolts go in these 1, 2, 3, 4 points, we could go ahead and start to tighten them down. My suggestion would be, since we really do want to keep this flush and flat on the top, is that we incrementally adjust these a little bit at a time instead of tightening down one completely and then moving on to the others. So on these bottom two here, you're going to be using this tool that's provided to you by Yakima. It is similar to an Allen tool. It does have that opening in the top because there is a notch inside of here. That way anybody with any old Allen key can't really get in here and undo these at all. On the top, we're going to be using this very large L-shaped Allen key. Now that we've got that flush and flat on here, the last thing that we're going to want to do is make sure that these are loosened up, because we need this to be able to come out, lay our towers on it, and then tighten it back up to grab onto the towers, which are going to be going underneath the lips of either side of this. So we'll go ahead and get that loosened up, and we'll have that ready to mount our towers and tighten down later. To install our last tower, we're going to simply slip that under the lip in the back there, push that door down, and we'll get it tightened in. Prep our crossbars. To do that, the first thing we'll need to do is loosen this bolt here to remove our end cap. Once we have that taken off, we're going to use this bottom channel to insert the anchor points for our bolts. And then we will replace our end cap. One of the things that Yakima did for us to help us out in determining how much overhang we have on each side of our crossbar is they do have markers on the bottom of the crossbars to help you determine exactly how much overhang is going on each side of the vehicle. That way we can make sure the overhang on the passenger and the driver's side is even. Now that we have everything in place, let's go ahead and get them on our towers. Now that I've got it up here, I'm going to use the markers on the bottom to make sure that I have an equal overhang on each side before I bolt it in. With that backing plate that slides around kind of independently in here, one of the tricks you can use to kind of get it lined up is to use your tool to go in there and basically make sure that gets lined up. We use the same method to put in our first bolt here. Now that we've got it all lined up, we're going to go ahead and install our second bolt and do the same exact thing over on the passenger side. Now that we've got everything installed, secured with a nice, tight, even fit everywhere, the last thing we're going to do for our installation is install our lock core, which is going to go just over this knob here, twist down. Now your ladder rack is secure to the vehicle and you don't have to worry about any theft. Now, once again, this is Curt at eTrailer. Thanks for stopping by.